It's time, boys!
Welcome back to War Academy, where the more you learn, the less you lose. In this video, we're going to go over some additional combos that should have been put in my part 1 of this video, as well as a secondary guide for orcs. Make sure you stay tuned to the end of this video. I'm going to show you some of my favorite orc archetypes if you want to come up with a new fun theme to play with your orcs. Because you got to get cunning in order to get brutal. Before we begin, I just want to say, guys, I'm getting really close to 1,000 subscribers. Please help me hit 1,000 subscribers. Just scroll down a little bit, hit the subscribe button, and you'd be doing me a huge favor. If you want to know some more useful combos that you can add to your army, make sure you check out part 1 of this video, where I go over at least 10 other things that are not used in as much as they should be being used in orcs. Starting with the number one thing that I think a lot of orc players have forgotten about, and that's the Death Skulls. For playing Death Skulls, you get Infantry OBSEC, which is amazing. You get 5 up Feel No Pain to Mortal Wounds, which is amazing. You get a reroll, a hit, or a wound roll every time you attack, which is amazing. It makes MSU a lot stronger than it normally would be with orcs. This makes having small unit sizes and multiple of them even stronger than it already would be to have that. A lot of people don't take Death Skulls because they want to be Goths because they want Gaz, but Gaz is better with Death Skulls because you want that double wah and you want good shooting units. Gaz is taken as a supreme command, and he stays Goths, and the rest of your army can be Death Skulls. This will not break the rules at all for detachment wise. The biggest reason, guys, is just that you're so much more effective at range. You're really effective at melee because re-rolling a big hit, on a wound roll can do a lot of damage with a lot of the weapons that orcs wield in melee. But being able to re-roll the wound on that rocket launcher is also really good too. So if you're going to take 20 boys, Goths are going to get a lot bigger advantage. But if you say have one Death Dread going in, that Death Dread is going to be a lot better in melee by being Death Skulls. Biggest reason why I love these guys though is it opens up so much more of the codex. You can make a lot better use out of a lot more things in the codex than what just going Goths can do. You can create a little bit more interesting lists and get to see units that you don't normally get to see the field as much because you're aiming for that MSU build. I don't see Death Skulls much in events anymore, and that's why I just wanted to talk about them because they are amazing. So since Nephilim, this has become one of my favorite units to bring against Armor Contempt. Like, screw Armor Contempt, I hate that shit, it's just extra annoying when you're orcs, but these guys counter the shit out of Terminators. So, you take a squad of 3 Koptas, you give them Boom Boys. So Boom Boys gives them an extra AP on blast weapons, so their rockets are all blast. So you combine this with Gaz's Wah, you now have melt-to-gun rockets that come in out of Deep Strike. So this means there's no hiding from them. They can be behind a building, they can be wherever. Like, you're going to be able to Deep Strike, put these guys right where they need to be, shoot these at Terminators, and watch as the 3 damage just destroys them. Not only do you get the 6d3 rocket shots that are going to be strength 8, and if you have Gaz AP4 at damage 3, you can use ramming speed on them. So you can get a 3d6 charge that's going to pop some mortal wounds, and you can attack with the spinning blades that are getting bonus attacks. And each attack goes into more attacks, so you're actually getting a double wah bonus almost from them. And they're already getting a double wah, so you're getting like a triple wah. It's crazy. They're awesome. A lot of new players to 40k think that it's good to deep strike melee units, which is definitely not true. The best things you can deep strike are going to be ranged units, and that 3d6 charge that these guys get is icing on the cake, because if they couldn't do that, I would still deep strike them just for these missiles. One final tip is, if you forget to hit that subscribe button, guys, it can actually result in bad karma, which can negatively affect the dice that you roll in your next game. I'm just giving you a heads up. Hit the subscribe button, you'd be doing me a favor, and you should just roll better your next game. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. Next awesome thing that I don't think enough people are using is the Squiggoth. So the Squiggoth has an awesome rule called the Howdah. So apparently a Howdah is just, this is like the Lord of the Rings thing that the elephants had on their back. Well, apparently that's some high-tech shit because it allows the transport to move and the guys on top don't count as moving. So now you can get your tank hunters with your tank bustas. Your tank bustas can now shoot out of a moving thing on a 4+. This is a 50% damage increase versus firing out of a truck. And if you're shooting at a target that's -1 to hit, then it's a 100% damage increase. Not to mention this beast is toughness 8 with 18 wounds, 3+ save, and his ramshackle. So the 18 wounds means you won't be able to, hide him behind terrain as easy and stuff, but it's actually a pretty small model. If you ever see one, they're not that big. The problem with these things when you fight against them is that you're going to put a lot of effort to bring this thing down, and all you did was just make the tank bustas fall. You didn't even stop them from shooting at you until you kill them too. Before the Squig himself, he only has 4 attacks and he doesn't get like a sweep or anything, but they're strength 8, AP 3, D6 damage, and then he does D3 mortal wounds on the charge. The worst part about this guy though, he doesn't have the Squig keyword. So if he had the Squig keyword, running him in a snake bites army with like your Squigs, oh, that would be so awesome. Snake bites, just like Death Skulls, are something that just I don't think are used enough. If they had a few like more Squig units, it would be a lot easier to make an army with them though. For this next tip, we shall be making the triple layer burrito. Once we have finished making the burrito, we will serve it to our opponent and shove it down his face, shove it right down his face. First, we need to sprinkle in a little Death Skulls. Death Skulls gives us OBSEC. It really brings the flavor. You can choose any 3 ingredients to put in your burrito. For example, you can use 2x5 orcs, commandos for instance, plus a character, maybe a 25-point mech boy or a war boss. Next, we simmer the truck over an objective. If you like to cook your truck a little bit longer, I suggest putting ranged units like tank busters inside the truck. Now we serve it to your opponent in 4 pieces. First, your opponent must deal with the truck itself. Then he must deal with a squad of 5 that are obsecking the objective. Then he must deal with the next squad of 5 that are obsecking the objective. Then he must kill the character that is obsecking the objective. If the opponent just killed the truck and failed to deal with the rest of the layers to the burrito, then you're going to have a bunch of OBSEC guys that are now near the middle of the board, just running around, causing all kinds of chaos. And that's why before we go over the next one, you guys should just leave a giant wah in the comments if you guys want more orc videos.
High five! All right!
I think I may have mentioned this guy in my last orc video, but the Killy Claw War Boss, guys, is amazing. I don't know why everybody's running this War Boss in the Mega Armor Relic thing. Like that's not anywhere near as good in my opinion. So the way I usually have pretty good luck with my orcs. Don't consider myself bad with them at all. The normal HQs that I run is I have my Supreme Command with Gaz, and then I have a Squig Boss and a War Boss, usually in a double patrol or a battalion in patrol. For the Squig Boss, I usually give him the -1 to be wounded thing, plus the Beast Hide Mantle. So this Killy Claw War Boss, I generally put him in the truck with knobs. And the knobs just kind of, if you've ever used Dark Eldar, like he's like Incubi to Drazhar, the War Boss is going to do the heavy lifting. The knobs are there to basically clear the way for him. I also generally don't do them as truck boys just because I'm such a fan of those Boom Boy Kappas. So you give him brutal but cunning with the Killy Claw, and you can do insane damage. So you are strength 12, AP 4, damage 4, and you reroll anything that didn't get to the inflict damage step. And then he also gives, the +1 to hit to the knobs, which is amazing because guess what? Like you say your Death Skulls, not only you OBSEC have the feel no pain and can reroll like one of the big Killy Claw attacks, but you're now Goths too because of the +1 to hit is the same thing as Exploding Sixes for the most part. And it's the brutal but cunning. So I play also a lot of Dark Eldar, and Dark Eldar got Competitive Edge, which was the first brutal and cunning. And this thing just whomps stuff. Especially when you're going after things that have a good invulnerable saves, like a 4-up invuln. that basically, okay, I'm gonna have to make you roll it again because you passed it.
Right now, we're having it out. Let's go. Come on. Come on.
We got to talk about Mega Knobs because a lot of people aren't using Mega Knobs correctly. So Mega Knobs cost 90 points. They're a 30-point model. I know flamers are cool because we can hit things finally, but do not put heavy flamers for 10 points on a Mega Knob. It's silly. That's Mega Knob's biggest strength, is being there's not really any other codex out there that can get such a powerful unit, only 30 points per model for a Terminator that hits harder than a Terminator. As soon as you put heavy flamers on them and the double kill saws, you're completely taking away that role that they can play. So Mega Knobs are a great unit to go toe-to-toe with other elites because of their cheap cost. The only time you'd really want a flamethrower is if you have a really close charge, somehow you got that close without being charged, and you need to clear a screen. But usually when you shoot a flamethrower, you're just going to pull yourself farther away from your charge distance, and you don't want to shoot it anyways. But you pay a lot of points for them. Keep your Mega Knobs bare naked, and only if you have like 5 points left in a list or whatever and you don't know where to put the 5 points, you can give the sergeant double kill saw or something. So before we talk about the orc secondaries, I want to give you guys a warning about the kill rig. I was once watching one of the streams for a GT, and the game had just started, and I was trying to figure out, I was like, how does this guy have almost his all secondaries maxed already, and it's only turn 1? Yeah, in one turn, this player had scored, I think it was like 45 points against an orc player. What ended up happening was the player had 3 kill rigs in his army, and he lost all 3 at the same time. And that what this ended up doing was it gave him, the other player, 9 points for Abhor the Witch. It gave him 9 points on a faction secondary that he had that was similar to Assassination, where he needs to kill characters. And then it gave him 9 points on Bring It Down. This faction, I want to say it was Necrons that were fighting him. I don't remember which army was doing it. I just was like, whoa. I was thinking of trying out 3 kill rigs until I saw that happen. And that's scary. So maybe 2 kill rigs and then something else. But yeah, the fact that that kill rig is a character is something I really don't like. So I split this into 4 different categories. Those orcs are actually capable of doing a lot of them. I'm going to try to help you narrow it down to which ones are the best ones for you to do. Starting with the secondaries that are easy to build for, that you can just put right into your army and you should just be able to do. For example, Behind Enemy Lines is one of my go-tos for almost any army that I play. Just getting 2 units in your opponent's deployment zone isn't that hard, especially with an MSU army like orcs, and you have things like the teleporter. So for example, you can take your 2 Death Dreads and just teleport in 2 Death Dreads right into the back. They'll deploy together because they're a squad, but then they'll count as 2 separate units. So they'll count as 2 units for Behind Enemy Lines. I just really don't care much for things like Engage on All Fronts. I always get screwed over by that 6-inch thing where you got to be fully away from the 6-inch. Yeah, I hate the 6-inch gap there. Yeah, from Storm Boys to just shooting bikes into your opponent's deployment zone. There's a lot of ways that orcs have that can get Behind Enemy Lines. And Commandos too are also great for it. You don't have to be fully in the deployment zone to get the points. You have to be also close to it. You just don't get as many. Next is Retrieve Data. So if you have a bunch of trucks or war tracks that are pushing the enemy and you're going to have a lot of infantry in them that are MSU, you can really easily just, I'm going to move these, even if it's tank bustas, over here to try to retrieve data. Again, it's something orcs can get pretty creative with ways to get data. And then there's the Good Bits. So the Good Bits is an amazing secondary that I use a lot of the time. You just got to be real careful on the maps that you use it on. Look if their objectives are in your favor or not. I tend to use Gretchen as my troops in most of my orc armies, and I tend to not use any boys, sadly. So it's similar to something like Banners, but Banners is much more map dependent, where this one you can build your army a little bit more for Good Bits if you want to. And there's Psychic Interrogation. So Psychic Interrogation we can do very cheap and just throw Weird Boy in there. He doesn't really need to cast any other spells. You can just interrogate. And if you're playing in a map where you're going to be hitting a mid-objective hard, like you can go Ritual instead, but just remember that being in the middle of the board is the most dangerous place that you can be And what I noticed a lot of players will do is if they take Ritual, then their boys end up charging past it and want to go past the middle or die or do something, and Psyker's just all alone in the middle where he dies. The Psychic Interrogation is usually what I lean towards. Plus, just having the chance to get a CP is kind of nice. So just with these 4, you can build an army, and just almost every game you're going to use one of these 4. And I usually recommend doing that just in case your opponent doesn't give up any secondaries. But a lot of times your opponent does give up secondaries, and a lot of times people don't look at their own list and think, if I was to fight my list right now, what secondaries would I take against myself? Most common one, especially now with the buff that it's gotten in the past Warzone, is no prisoners. So no prisoners just kill infantry and swarms and stuff. If your opponent gives up no prisoners, then that means one of these first ones I mentioned you don't have to take. So for example, you might not need to take Psychic Interrogation because you're taking no prisoners. Now you have your caster casting a spell, which is just bonus. So Stomp 'em Good is another decent one that I'd say is mostly based off of what your enemy's playing. If he's a heavy ranged army and doesn't have much melee at all, Stomp 'em Good is usually a good choice. So I hate Grind Them Down. I think Grind Them Down is one of the worst ones in the game. This is kind of like Grind Them Down, but you can get a little bit more points, and Orcs should be killing stuff in melee. It's the Orky way. So if you way out melee your opponent, this is a good one to take. Just don't take it if he's in melee army as well, because that'll bite you in the ass. So another decent one for Orcs is Assassination. So it's a purge the enemy category, but the best armies to do Assassination are usually melee armies. So generally, that's how you're going to clear the screens around guys easier and either drag them into combat or just get some guns on them once you've cleared their bodyguards. Just be careful on what you take Assassination against. Some armies, like Sisters, Dark Eldar with the heavy covens, and even Necrons might give up Assassination, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy at all. Bring It Down is another one that you can choose based off of your enemy, but be careful with Bring It Down, because a lot of people count Bring It Down and go, oh, if I kill all your tanks, I'll get this, and that's enough for me. That's 10 points. That should be enough. Don't assume you're going to kill all your opponent's vehicles. Vehicles tend to stay alive throughout the game and at low wounds, and they're just not worth shooting because you got other stuff you need to deal with. So really add up your opponent's Bring It Down score, and then tell yourself, okay, is it still worth taking if, say, 2 of those vehicles didn't die? Abhor the Witch is fun. He's gonna probably interrogate you just for free, so it's fun to you can get Abhor the Witch, like you're fighting Grey Knights or something, and even some Tyranid and Chaos armies. But generally, if you're taking Abhor the Witch, that means you gave up Interrogate, which I don't always know is the best option. It's always good to have a weird boy in your army just to have Interrogate in your pocket if you need it. And that's the main thing, is before the real trick if you're having problems with your secondaries, it's because you're not choosing your secondaries before you're making your list. You're making your list and then choosing your secondaries, and that's not the correct way to do it. You need to decide, I want to go for this secondary, and this secondary. Okay, now what kind of army should I build to succeed at the best? A lot of people who go, oh, I love this army, it works so well together at killing things, which is not how you win 40k really. And they don't even think about their secondaries until they get to the table. Next is the secondaries based on map. So this isn't necessarily worse than the other ones. Some of these could be even better than any of the other ones listed, but they're more map specific. For example, banners. Banners is really not a good secondary if, say, there's 3 objectives across the middle. It's not a safe one to take, because those objectives are going to go up and down, and you're going to be wasting units multiple times. Don't take that on the mid objective maps. But on maps that you have the objectives on your side of the deployment and you're real easy to get to and real easy to defend, then this becomes an amazing one to take. So for example, on something like Tides of Conviction, and then like I kind of mentioned before, maps where the fighting's going to be in the middle and you're going to have tons of stuff there, and orcs push really hard, especially first couple turns, so you can get Warp Ritual. You can get a guy there safely and he won't die from being in the middle. Warp Ritual's good. It's really good because it's better than Interrogate generally, because you don't have to do it as much, and then you can cast your actual real spell either later in the game or if you have to early in the game. Do something like, oh, I'm going to jump these guys before I even start, getting my secondaries and not actually losing any points. Psychic Interrogation, you got to get off every single turn. Get off it. Engage can be kind of map dependent. I don't know. I don't like Engage on all fronts. You can, if you are careful, you can use it. If you have like the right type of units, you can use it. But it said that being fully within. So I always like have part of me is in the wrong spot and it screws me over. And the worst part is I never think about exactly if I'm too far to the side until after I started shooting. So finally, these are the secondaries I would just stay away from. Just you can usually pretend these don't exist and you should do fine. The best of the worst is biggest and the best. It's a lot of confidence to pull this one off, and like if you're really confident you're gonna win this game, it's definitely a win more kind of secondary. But it's too random. There's things that can happen in 40k where you might lose a character that's important and you might have to go in and dive something just to get this kill. Like if your 110 point war boss gets the opportunity to kill, you know, a 200 point redemptor, he's got to take that usually. This one I hate. Grind them down. I hate grind them down. I have never seen someone go, oh, I'm glad I took grind them down. I've seen tons of people go like, oh, I wish I would have took grind them down. It's like, cool, but you didn't because you're smart. But it's always the other way around. It's like it's a cursed secondary or something. I also really don't like Green Tide. Green Tide is fun in theory and on paper, but it never really works out. You end up having to take, it's too much to commit to doing something. And if you need to send your boys in and you need to clear out an area, like orcs don't like to have orcs everywhere really. So these are some army archetypes that I really enjoy playing. So I made these little unit cards for them that I've had for years. The army stays pretty much the same throughout the editions, just like certain things here and there change. Starting off with the Green Acres. This is boys spam. This is your Green Tide, tons and tons of boys. It really focuses on that toughness 5 profile. So I actually mix in a lot of 10-man squads of knobs, which basically function like kind of like a 2-wound space marine. This list tries to pretty much avoid anything that's high wounds. Just make your opponent, all of his high damage guns you want him to waste into this list. Everything from storm boys, regular boys, commandos, those are all going to be things that'll be great in this list all the time. One of my first orc conversions I ever did back when I was a little kid was Mr. Hat. So Mr. Hat Smash a Mob is basically an orc army that's all focused on nothing bigger than a buggy. So nothing that goes over 10 wounds, and everything has at least 5 wounds. So it's going mech guns, buggies, lots of death dreads, killicans you could use, optas, just all the mech shit. Next up we have probably the one I play the most is Gork's Carbon Footprint. This is the greenest orcs. They are very big into carpooling. This is at least one battle wagon, a bunch of trucks, and you're basically playing a pseudo Dark Eldar list where you're just going to drop the boys off. They're going to charge. Most of the units in the trucks are going to be more elite units. Now there's the newest one to the orcs this edition. This one's very fun to play. So this is the Squiggy-Mon. So this is your Snakebite Squigless. So Snakebites get +1 to wound with their Squig units. And this is super strong that your orcs are suddenly Blood Angels. Problem is, you need a lot of squigs. Not everything that is a squig has a squig keyword, like the Squiggoth. Super tribal, super fun, as long as your wallet can handle it. Or you have a 3D printer. Then there's my main list, which is Bloodbath and Beyond. So I got my War Boss, Bloodbath, and then his Mech Boy Beyond. And they're usually leading this army. This is kind of a mix of all the other ones. So it's all the best things from the different archetypes kind of combined into one. This is the one that changes the most, but is just what I call my tournament army. Since the release of the new Ghazghkull, it's always featured Ghazghkull. And that about does it. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you could please hit the subscribe button. I'm very close to hitting 1,000 subscribers. Also, if you love what I do and you want to help me get videos out faster, please check out my Patreon. The link will be down in the description. And don't forget to join us on Discord. In the next orc video, I was thinking of making a list of my personal top 5 most common MVP orc units since the start of the current decks. Give a like down to the video if that's something you guys want to see.